Hi, my name is Bryce Logan, and I'm going to be discussing the 2018 Russian film Leto by director Kirill Serebrennikov. This is a music biopic, but it feels as though it's different. I've seen many music biopics before, such as Bohemian Rhapsody and Rocket Man, and they all have a sort of formula. The formula being you get to see the band during its formative years, perhaps singling on a single person of the band, a standout performer, and you get to see the band's peak of popularity and the culture surrounding that, such as the parties and the romances. And you get to see the decay of fame and perhaps whether or not their struggles, such as drug addiction or divorce. Um, the film Leto feels different, however. It is a biopic on the band Kino, led by the character Victor on the right here. Just set some background for the film before I discuss the actual plot. In the 80s, Europe experienced this punk boom led by the band the Sex Pistols. It is a sort of anti-establishment movement you'll see in many films set around this era and of this era. That their hair is spiked up. They're in these denim vests with patches that just are decrying Nazis and the government. And it's no different in coming to Russia, perhaps even more, because they idolize cultures outside of the country. Also within this film, it's set in Russia, and it's set in the 80s, so of course it's set in the Soviet Union. The Soviet Union is, of course, locked in a Cold War with the United States, a reignited Cold War with the United States. So outside influence, especially Western influence, such as the United States, is banned in Russia. It's looked down upon because America is Russia's ideological enemy, and so bands like these from America, such as the Sex Pistols, even though they're from London, Western influences are frowned upon because you want to be a patriot for your country, you want to support your country, and supporting the enemy is directly against that. So, moving on to the plot centers around Victor, as I said before, the character on the right, and his band Kino, as well as the two other main characters of this story being Natasha in the middle and Mike on the left. Within this film, you see a love triangle form between Victor, Mike, and Natasha, and it's a very interesting one as well. By the end of the film, you get to see the sort of natural conclusion of this romance. Anyways, you get to see the band sort of experience popularity and boom, and then by the end of the film, you get to see their first larger performance with their own fans. And along the way, you get to meet like a cavalcade of really, really interesting characters. My two favorite characters of this film, besides Victor, were the punk and the skeptic. They're never named explicitly, I don't believe, but the punk, to me, is a standout character because he has one of the best scenes in the film. Early in the film, they're on a train, like singing punk songs, and a patriot of the Soviet Union approaches them and asks, why are you singing these songs? They're the songs of the enemies. They're our ideological enemy. And of course, this punk is so anti-establishment, he's willing to, defend his right to express himself. And so an all-out brawl ensues. And this brawl is set to Psycho Killer by the Talking Heads. And it's bloody. You see the blood running down the punk's face. And it just feels visceral and real. And that's one of the worst parts because it doesn't happen. Throughout the course of this film, there are several musical numbers. I don't want to say this film is a musical, but it has, bits and pieces of it that go along to music like other music biopics, particularly Bohemian Rhapsody. It has these sequences that are set along to music, and they just don't happen. It's just like a daydream, a dream of these characters. And so the sequence ends, and it never happened. And one of the other standout bits of the sequence is the fact that it's all like animated as well. You see just like outlines the characters. It's like almost the film is being drawn on by like a toddler, because you could see like these visceral like white marks along the page, along the film, and throughout these sequences. Another noteworthy part of this movie is that it's almost all in black and white. I say almost all because there are these like almost nostalgic little looks like Super 8 videos of the band like just hanging out and spending time together. And there's another sequence, and it's another standout sequence for me, particularly near the end of the film, where I believe the punk character dies. It seems as though like he's overdosing, and then he kind of staggers towards a projection screen of a beach and just steps into it. And you see color bloom, and you see this man on his last leg get to see, you know, the light beyond the tunnel, so to speak. It's another standout sequence to me. Beyond the punk, all the other actors in this film give a really good performance. Particularly Victor, portrayed by T.O.U., is a very, very good performance. I also really enjoy the costume design of this movie. It's really representative of the era. You see the big hair and the sort of ratty punk clothes. So, getting on to one of this film's other strongest elements, I believe, is its ending. This ending sort of encapsulates the theme of this movie. Leto in Russian is summer, and this movie feels as though it's a summer. You get to see the band in its formative years at the beginning of the summer when you're hanging out with friends and experiencing the good weather. By the end of this movie, it's this melancholic, dreary almost ending. It's not, because they're performing, but there is a couple of scenes in the end that make it really melancholic and almost sad. The romance between Victor and Natasha is unfortunately extinguished. It's ended because they don't feel as though they have the spark anymore. And then you get to see Victor, it almost is like a flash cut to a future. And you get to see Victor performing with his band Kino, and as he's performing, you get to see that unfortunately the real life Victor, lived a very, very short life. He died in 1990. And then you get to see the character Mike as well. They all use drugs and drink very heavily, so you get to see they have kind of a live fast, die young life. Mike dies early as well. And I feel it's very representative of the punk era of this time. You know, of course, Sex Pistols' Sid Vicious also died very young. And while it's real people, it feels very representative of this era and of the Soviet Union as well. You get to see, I feel as though the Soviet Union is also represented in this summer. While it looks back on it, it also criticizes it, and you get to see the heights of the Soviet Union at the beginning of its summer, and you get to see the death of the Soviet Union in 1991, which is when the character Mike dies. That's why I kind of brought it all together for me. You get to see the death of it, and the death of not censorship in Russia, but the death of an era in Russia. Anyways, I believe you should watch this movie. It's very well put together, very well shot. The cinematography in this is beautiful. There's some really, really standout shots, such as the sequence on the train and the death of the punk. It's just a very beautiful, very heartfelt, nice movie, and I would recommend it to anybody. Thank you. Have a good day.